While exposing fraud, waste, and abuse in government spending is rightfully the political priority right now, so much of the focus goes overseas. Exactly what kind of contraceptives did we send to Mozambique, and does wrongly describing them originally mean it makes sense to send them anyway, for example? But it's important to remember so much of the abuse stays in our own country. We don't have to reach across the globe to scrutinize some faraway foreign warlords, though as long as we're sending them money, of course we should, but we can scrutinize our own corrupt leaders right here at home, because despite the claims from reporters that the evidence is lacking,
President Trump and Musk, his 4-year-old son in tow, saying they've identified billions of dollars in fraud and waste without providing specific evidence.
It turns out it's like finding dirt under a rock. Government fraud, waste, and abuse is at least as common, and just the slightest effort to do a journalist's job and flip that rock over will provide an abundance of evidence immediately. Case in point, the good work from LAist this week, an independent Los Angeles publication, finding, wow, the lady who runs the homelessness program for the city, Valicia Adams-Kellum, she signed more than $2 million over to the nonprofit that her husband manages, in what sure looks a lot like a clear violation of state and local ethics codes and regulations. And before we all laugh and say, ha ha, Angelino's getting exactly the sort of corruption they keep voting for, no, of course it's not that simple. It's not just their problem. You're getting the bill, and so am I, because these are federal grant dollars awarded to Los Angeles and then shuffled through the city government personnel to all their friends. Lesson for NBC's reporter we just heard from: the proper default skepticism is not watchdog claims government waste without evidence. It's government claims proper and efficient use of public money without evidence. One of these things is far more rare, because for anyone who's watched government try to solve mostly any problem ever, the overwhelming evidence is to the contrary. Government makes it worse and enriches itself on our backs in the process. And that's exactly what has happened with homelessness in LA long before this particular scandal. Valicia Adams-Kellum has been running the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority since March of 2023, after working closely with Mayor Karen Bass prior. Shortly after she took office, she was asked by a local reporter, "Hey, I notice we keep dumping more and more money into the problem, and it keeps getting worse. Your thoughts?"
The rise in numbers had to be a bit of a blow. Were you expecting the rise?
Well, I will tell you, it's very disappointing, but not surprising. We see that there's an increasing number of folks who are vulnerable economically. And so despite our tremendous efforts, we're finding people falling into homelessness faster than we can get them out.
Well, of course it's not surprising. If homelessness actually improves or maybe even goes away, your handsomely compensated job is no longer necessary. But even taken with its best intent, we shouldn't expect this idea to succeed anyway. Number one, because just in principle, you can't just give people money or stuff and expect them to reform their lives. That only enables pre-existing bad behavior or circumstances. These people are either mentally ill or drug addicted, which means they need intervention and institutionalization, or they choose to be homeless, which means they need a reality check that forces them to work. That's why a $700 million annual budget still is not doing it. That's the money on which the LA Homeless Services Authority operates. With some 45,000 homeless people in the city and climbing, that amounts to over 15 grand spent per homeless person per year. And it is very foolish to think that 20 or 30 or 100 grand each is going to change the fundamental causal problems. Oh, but that's unfair. It's not that much money per person because there's overhead and operational costs. So there sure are, aren't there? And that's the point. This money is not housing people, at least efficiently. It is lining pockets, and that has been plainly obvious since even before this particular abuse was uncovered. Just how many people has LA Homeless Program CEO Valicia Adams-Kellum moved off the street with this massive budget? No, not just dozens, hundreds.
How many people approximately, as of this taping, have you moved off the streets through the Inside Safe program?
About 356.
Wow, so they're closing in on solving 1% of the problem for 100 times the cost. That actually does sound like remarkable government efficiency. at least for LA. Why isn't it working better? Again, because participation is voluntary. Well, hello there, Mr. Bum. Say, would you like a comped Motel 6 stay? Ugh, no thank you. I find their rules far too restrictive. They still allow me to shoot up out here on the sidewalk.
So there are people out on the street, social worker type of people, helping the unhoused and offering them this, a stay in a motel.
And most of them have said yes.
That's inspirational right there.
Well, if most say yes, then why are the numbers actually leaving the streets so low? That can't be true. Some say yes, I'm sure is the numerically correct answer, but in fairness, she may be a little more right than I'm crediting. Because when she says hundreds have moved off the street, that's with reference to a specific program she started with the mayor in 2023, and this interview was recorded when she was just a month on the job as LAHSA CEO. So maybe by now it's thousands who have moved off the street, but that's still in the context of tens of thousands more who have moved into them. Plus that program that did move hundreds or maybe even thousands was still a gigantic waste of personally enriching money. Adams-Kellum was paid $60,000 as part of a no-bid contract for a month and a half of work from her friend Mayor Karen Bass to advise Bass on developing this program. That's $10,000 a week just for consulting. And then she was hired to run the Homeless Services Authority and is now paid a $430,000 salary. That is twice the money the actually elected city councilors receive and almost double what the mayor herself makes. If only we could all be so lucky to get $500,000 to make the problem we're supposed to solve worse. I guess that's not totally fair. If only we could all get $500,000 to do almost nothing to solve the problem at all. Because all that money, the $700 million budget and the $500,000 salary, all that got LA was a 2.2% drop in homelessness in 2024. So now, instead of 46,000 people experiencing unhousedness, there are a hardly improved 45,000. So at this rate, $700 million to solve 2% of the problem, it'll only take $35 billion to fix the rest. 3 times the city's entire existing budget. Or maybe that could be trimmed down some because a recent audit found shockingly not all $700 million is actually being put to good use. In fact, they don't really know what use a lot of it is going to. Some of it just disappeared. Or, as the LA Times described, the auditor found some relaxed accounting. Specifically, $5 million in contracts they awarded lacked supporting documentation to evaluate. And they understated the amounts they actually paid to 2 recipients by $500,000. And we should all notice that the IRS accounting applied to the rest of us to make sure that they get their money, though that is never relaxed in such a way. We'll relax in a prison cell if we don't take that seriously. But all those problems were from before I got here, said new LA Homeless Services Authority CEO Valicia Adams-Kellum. Oh, really? Said reporters at LAist. Well, let's have a look. Well, hey, it turns out actually that over $2 million in contracts last year went to a Santa Monica nonprofit called Upward Bound House, which is awfully coincidental considering Valicia's husband, Edward Kellum, is in senior leadership there. Ironically, he's the director of operations and compliance because such practices are not very compliant with ethics rules and laws against this sort of conflict of interest. And making it even more egregious, these contracts weren't signed by some assistant or some authorized agent. There's Valicia's signature right there above the name Upward Bound House, and the signature of the woman who runs that organization not once, but 3 times. Twice in March and once in May, according to documents obtained through a public records request. Now, the LA Homeless Services Authority has contracted with Upward Bound House for years, so that's not actually new, but that does mean that Valicia Adams-Kellum was well aware of this existing potential conflict of interest when she took the job. She told the LAist in December that she has followed all ethics rules. She disclosed her relationship upon hiring and recused herself from any business decisions relating to her husband's employer. Except she didn't. She signed multi-million-dollar contracts for her husband's employer inside of just the 9 months prior. Oh, whoopsie. Did I do that? Her spokesman Steve Urkel now says. See, the signatures were just mistakes after her staff accidentally sent her the contracts. Dang it. Well, how did the same mistake happen 3 times right next to the name of her husband's employer, which she should have been extra vigilant about, considering she says she was fully aware of the potential conflict of interest? Because even if that's true, and this was legitimately just an unfortunate triple sequence of mistakes, that means she's lazily and inattentively signing over millions of dollars in public money without actually thinking about what she's doing. And if she was aware of the conflict of interest, why weren't members of the city commission that governs the agency informed about it? Because they say they were given no such information when voting on the contracts. Sorry, that's enough. No more questions, Felicia's spokesperson says. Email requests for more information are now going unanswered. It's not just a bad look, it's almost certainly an illegal look. California state conflict of interest laws ban public officials from any involvement in contracts where they have a personal financial interest, specifically including agreements that financially benefit a spouse or an organization that pays a spouse. Beyond just the law, the LA Homeless Services Authority has a code of ethics that forbids even the appearance of a conflict of interest, and there's much more than just that here. Examples explicitly include immediate family relationships with an agency's vendors. And no, whoopsie, it was an accident is not a valid excuse, even if that's true. An ethics watchdog quoted in the LAist story says, in the eyes of the law, a conflict of interest violation is still a violation, even if the breach was unintentional. And if whoopsie is not a valid legal excuse, well, then she has no valid legal excuse because she hasn't offered one otherwise. So the next question is one of few more ridiculous than how big does this pile of taxpayer money have to grow to solve this problem? Will this woman actually be held accountable? For violations of California law against this sort of behavior, there's a state commission that can deliver both civil and criminal penalties, but membership is appointed by all Democrat state officials, including the governor. Only one of the 5 members is required to be from an opposition political party. The LA Homeless Services Authority Commission could remove her as CEO, but that's just professional discipline, not legal justice, and they're all appointees of the mayor or county supervisors, all of whom are Democrats anyway, except one. In fact, all the appointees are Democrat women, except one, a point that Adams Kellum has emphasized as a strength.
Knowing that I'm supported by such an amazing group of women, female leaders who have been out there for years and years dedicating themselves to community service, volunteerism, and change is amazing. It's inspiring. It's anxiety-provoking. I don't want to let them down at all.
Yeah. Is it even possible to let them down, though? That's now the question. Or what, if anything, will actually happen if you do? So legal or political accountability, that's no guarantee, maybe no likelihood at all. But will there even be media accountability? Because it's now multiple days after this story broke, and at least as far as I can find, there is no coverage from the LA Times, who lovingly profiled Felicia last year as a persistent agent of change on homelessness. Wow, what a bargain. Just $500,000 plus an unethical or illegal multi-million-dollar double dip into the cookie jar on top of it, for a 2% change. But same with KTLA, NBC Los Angeles, CBS Los Angeles, other major TV channels. Just like the mayor's spokesperson, it is total silence, as though the story doesn't exist. So unlike the rampant homelessness, this probably is a problem that will just magically disappear after throwing a pile of public money at it. Ironically, I'm sure that money has already purchased some very fine housing that those she supposedly helps have almost no hope of ever securing. That is, if she was smart enough to spend or invest it wisely. But that's probably too much credit, though, by her own description, because there are a lot of legal documents to sign when you buy a house. And as she says, she is just way too careless to sign them all correctly. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.